All right, so we're going to be building an Axial XR10 today. It's going to be based on a KRX crawler chassis and KRX crawler links. We started off with the 7954 high voltage high tech servo. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's 400 ounces. Then we have the Novak M2 Dig ESC and motor combo. That's the KRX crawler special chassis. And KRX crawler special chassis panel. And I went with the Great Hobby 750 milliamp 11 volt battery. Here we have the Mini T low C springs. Going to be using that for my shock mods. Revo ball ends for the KRX crawler links. The KRX crawler links themselves. Now we have the Castle Creation BEC. And I'm going to be using that DX3R Pro. Here's the kit. This is one here that I won at a raffle for, I guess, one of my first rock crawling comps here at GTA Hobbies. So finally got all the parts that I wanted, so figured better time than now to start building. So I start pulling out all our plastic parts. A lot of the stuff is not going to be used. That's not going to be used. Only a few things in there are going to be used. I think I'm going to be going with the Vanquish rims later. For now, I'm just going to use the rims from my other kit. So we're going to be starting with the front axle. Get out all our axle pieces. All our parts bags. Kick the camera a bit. Alright, so with the Dremel here, we're cleaning out one little piece at the bottom of the motor mount plate. That's going to allow to remove the motor from the axle once it's fully built. Alright, so we got a couple flange bearings. Put the first shaft and gear, I don't know what you call that one. There's an E-clip that goes in on the opposite side. The gear sits on. Alright, so now we're going to start putting in the rest of the flange bearings. The other gear and E-clip. Actually, I bent that guy a little bit. Alright, so now we have a little plastic housing that we're going to screw into the motor mount. Or motor mount plate, should I say. From there, we're going to assemble the rest of the gears. And our final drive gear there. And for the next part here, I find putting the bearings on the two last gears, I guess, if you're looking at it from this direction. And the gear closer to the camera, that one I end up putting the bearing in the housing itself. So we're going to put the housing on now. And as you can see, I put the outside bearing in, and the other one's directly on the shaft. So here we have two screws. Make sure that our pinion gear is lined up with the spur. Got a little bit of Loctite on there. So we're going to put the final housing cover on. And we're going to get the rest of the hardware, the drives, more bearings. I'm going to assemble the motor to the axle housing. And now we're just going to be installing the center gear. Two bearings on each side. Having some issues trying to put that bearing on. It was quite stiff. So now I got it in. I'm going to start closing up the halves, and what I'm doing here on the side is I'm measuring with the caliper, making sure that all the screws are the right length. Don't want anything too long to push through the housing, maybe crush some of the gears up top. And it's the kind of thing you wouldn't notice till you started it the first time, or ran it the first time, should I say. So I'm going to start closing up the halves. Now we're going to install the servo mount plate. You have that one floating servo post on one side. I'm going to screw that to the axle housing. Alright, so I'm going to put the hubs on the end. I clocked mine fully backwards, hoping to give me a little bit more I guess steering radius. Close those off with the screws. Now I'll push the shafts through and you'll feel them grab as you spin. Now that there, we're going to install the servo arm on the one knuckle, push the bearings through, and we're ready to assemble. So we're just going to secure those in there. And then we'll be ready to assemble the steering rods. Alright, so now we're just going to start threading the, I guess the ball ends or tie rod ends, whatever you want to call those. We have one bent end and the other one is straight. Go ahead and install that on the knuckles. And I'm sure as you noticed, I keep interchanging back and forth from the drill to the driver itself. Some stuff, it's easier to, I guess, start off with the drill, and afterwards I want to make sure not to strip it out, so I use the driver. Right, so I'll start pulling out the chassis pieces. A lot of tubing. I ended up using the caliper for this one too. Wanted to make sure I get everything measured out so you get the proper width on the chassis. More hardware. Alright, so start getting our plates ready. Alright, so everything's located. We're going to go ahead and install the two end pieces. I guess posts you want to call them, whichever. That's going to hold chassis together. Alright, so I'm going to continue. Now we're going to put the top part of the chassis on. We have two of these tubing lengths. They're the longest ones are going to be for the top. That's going to give the bottom of the chassis a, I guess, a thinner stance. Again, just double checking with the caliper, make sure we got the right screws. We have two other pieces of the tubing that are going to go on the outside at the back of the chassis, and the same on both sides. And then we have the center tube that was already in there. And this is, I guess, the trickier part, trying to get the top of that chassis assembled to the rest of it, because you have to go halfway through with the one plastic post and then finish it off with the other one through the center. I was finding at the end, once it started to get stiffer, it was really hard to get those in. But it wasn't too bad. Alright, so we got most of that secured. That bottom piece won't be able to get done till the links are ready. Alright, now onto the shocks. Take all our hardware out. Build a cartridge here. The bottom of the shocks. So we're going to put an O-ring, spacer, O-ring, and then close it off. Put that into our shock housing. Get the shock shaft assembled. Make sure we got that nut nice and tight. Push it through the shock. Screw on the ball end. So now I'm going to put the shock cap on and use the Dremel to cut off the top of the shock cap. Now we're going to sand it all down nice and smooth. Next is the body reamer. We're going to use that to get a small hole going in the center of that shock cap. Put in a button head screw, and then another ball end at the top. So this here is going to give me a little bit more length on the shock itself. So as you guys have all done, I'm sure, you're going to fill up the shock with oil, make sure we have no bubbles, top it off, put the diaphragm on, and the shock cap. There you go. Alright, so now with the Dremel, we're going to, I guess, round out the top of that cartridge at the bottom so we can get a shock to sit nice and centered on there. And now the shock retainer, and that's going to help out with the clearance, no more rubbing with the tires. Now with the chaotic crawler links, we're going to screw on all those Revo ball ends. And from what I've been reading, these things are extremely strong. The ball ends, that is. We know that the links are strong, but the ball ends are saying that the Revo ball ends are some of the toughest right now on the market. So I'm not expecting to break any of those. And the reason I went with the Revo ball ends is you also, with these links, you need 4mm ball ends. You won't be able to do it with the stock axial ones. Alright, so snap in the pivot ball. I guess I could have cut some of this out. It's pretty repetitive. So we got all our major parts built. I'm going to start adding the links to the chassis itself. And here's what I was saying. You're going to need to install the links before you can get the bottom of the chassis fully installed. So we're going to make our way around, install all those links. Oh, and I wanted to mention, the reason I didn't take the stickers off the links is because I wanted to make sure not to mix them up. The lower front and rear are very noticeable, but the top, front, and rear are very similar. I want to make sure we got the right angle going here. Secure the rest of the top links. Alright, so I'm going to put the final link in and move our way over to the shocks. So to install shocks, you're going to have to make sure you got that piece of tubing in between, gives you something to anchor into. And yes, the shocks are being installed upside down. I find they run a lot smoother like that. Same thing with the back. And make sure you have that piece of tubing in between. And are pretty much ready to get the axles in. So I have to spin some of the links and get them all nice and lined up. So that way we can get as much articulation as we can out of these links. Don't want anything to bind. Alright, so we have 2 screws to hold this guy in. One on each side. And the axle's pretty much assembled other than connecting the shocks. Alright, so almost done with those shocks. And we'll be able to move our way, finish up the rear axle. So pretty much the same process, front as back. Secure links. Alright, so the links seem to fit fine, but I was having some issues with the shocks rubbing and binding in the back. So what I ended up doing is installing it on the outside of the mount, but I did find the screw that was long enough to go through the, I guess, the little ear on the top of the housing, so that way it's not going to be adding much in the way of extra stress. So it's not only on the one mount, it's still going all through both mounts. So now on to the servo. Pretty simple to get this guy installed. You have 4 button head screws. It's going to hold it right into the servo posts. I guess I could have used the drill for that one. Let's speed up the process. Now, 2-sided tape. We're going to mount the ESC sideways in the chassis. It's pretty tight in there, not much in the way of room. Fish all our wiring through. Try to get it as neat, as tidy as possible. but it is a very tight fit. Alright, so now I'm going to be installing the receiver, some two-sided sticky tape, where I'm assuming usually the battery would go. Don't laugh at the laptop, that's the closest one I could find, and my Mac doesn't have Parallels, so I wasn't able to run the Windows software. So right now what I'm doing is I'm programming the BC so I can use 7.4 volt on the servo. Alright, so now what I'm doing is I'm cutting the lead from the servo. The only one I want to keep in is the yellow signal wire. The two other ones are going to be wired directly to the BC, and the signal wire from the BC is not going to be needed. So positive to positive, negative to negative. Now we're going to get the other side of the BC connected directly to our, I guess, battery leads. And those, I think they call them handy hands or third hand or whatever they may call them. Those things are really handy for some of the small wiring stuff. Alright, so that side's done. Pull down the shrink tubing. Positive side is going to be pretty much the same, so I figure we just hop over to the back, the BEC. Push in our shrink tubing. Get the third hand involved. Do a little bit of quick soldering here, which is, like I said, relatively quick. There's not much here. Push down all the shrink tubing. Make sure that got them all nice and tight and out of the way. And now over to the motor tabs. Solder that down. Make sure you get a good connection there. Front and back. Thing with these dual ESCs or dual motor ESCs, you got to make sure that the back polarity is reversed. So positive, positive in the front, negative, negative, and when you go to the rear, you're going to be reversing. Alright, so pretty much done with the motors. Now we're going to finish up the axles by putting in the pin and the hex. Make sure to Loctite that grub screw or thread lock. Make sure those don't come out. Front and back, I'm going to be doing the exact same. And now on to the tires. These are the Sedonas from my other XR10 kit. And pretty much done with the build at this point. I got a rock crawling comp coming this weekend, so hopefully we get a chance to maybe dial it in before we hit the rocks. But if not, I'm still going to be competing with this one and my other XR10 kit. So I really like the look of the truck. It's not, I guess, 100% completed yet. I still have the body panels to paint and install. That should be coming in the next video. But I have a feeling you're going to get some good performance out of this guy here. Good articulation. Not too much though, but got a very small footprint underneath, so less to get hung up on the rocks. All in all, I'm really happy with the build. Alright guys, so thanks for watching. Please thumbs up and subscribe.